was out there in the night sky, stared up at the stars in the hopes of seeing something out of the ordinary? Have you heard unexplainable noises coming from a vacant room, or watched a shadow cross the wall in front of you? Have you asked yourself if there is life after this one, or if you had life before? What about strange creatures that are mythical and elusive? Have you experienced deja vu or felt a prompting to leave because you felt you were in danger? If you have, you were on the fringe.
Welcome to another episode of On the Fringe. I'm Mark.
I'm Pam.
I'm Jess.
Yay! And
We
together,
did
Phil. I jumped in before you.
together we're imitating
That's
Mystery
all right.
Incorporated, I guess. Hey, I'm the dog. Woof. Where's my Scooby snack? We'll blank that out. That's copyright. Before we get started on our wonderful topic of the Nephilim, I've got a few ads for the show. Hey, this is Mark with What If Tomorrow and What If Tomorrow on the Fringe. Be sure to check out our website, whatiftomorrowmedia.com, and look at our cool merch. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, posters, and more. Our affiliates are Duke Cannon, EMP Shield, My Patriot Supply, and Conflicted the Game. Or check out buymeacoffee.com/whatiftomorrow and buy us a coffee. And as always, be sure to like, comment, and share on both Facebook and YouTube. It helps get our content out to others and help our channel grow. Now on with the show. Yay!
Woohoo.
So tonight we're going to be discussing Nephilim, or Nephilim. I've heard it pronounced. So I guess it depends on what part of the world. We're from Kansas, so it's Nephilim.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So don't hate us for our pronunciation.
If they know us, they know that we have.
Yeah, if they've ever
pronunciations
they've
and
ever
everything,
watched or
so.
listened to the show, they know we're going to butcher the English language, let alone everybody else's.
Right?
We could just shorten it and be like the Neph.
Oh,
Neph.
make them cool. The Neph.
The Neph. Oh, that was a little scary.
That was that's almost as bad as my face.
Oh,
But
Yeah, I'd try that, but I can't. I still cannot get my sound to come over the soundboard.
that worked.
That worked.
That
I heard
worked.
that.
That was
Oh,
boo,
no.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we heard that.
Well,
Try your other one.
let's try this one.
Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing.
Nothing.
It doesn't like that one. All right.
The only
well,
one that works is boo. That sucks.
no.
Dang it.
It's a little
Dang the
foreboding.
bad luck. I don't know what the technical issues. It's probably between here.
That's
between the ears.
absolutely what's wrong with my
That's-
setup.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
It's the lack of
Well-
knowledge. Right here.
So the Nephilim, I don't know how many. We've talked about this before a little bit,
Mhm.
but the Nephilim are an interesting subject. They're mentioned in the holy writings of several religions, Judaism and Christianity. I think they're only mentioned by name once or twice. Then they talk about the giants. According to the book of Enoch, the Nephilim came about when 200 angels who were set to watch over humanity and guide them and whatnot decided that, hey, human chicks are cool. Let's go get married. And
That was a nice way of putting it.
I mean, it's a family show most of the time.
Okay.
So they decided to have kids, and the kids ended up being huge giants
that were violent and wicked. So that is where the Nephilim comes. And Enoch is actually quoted by name at least once in the Bible and several times without being what's the word I'm looking for?
Non-canonical is
Oh.
what the Book of Enoch is. It
Well,
was not taken.
They've quoted him by name a couple times in the Bible, and then they've quoted him a couple times without giving him credit.
Yeah.
So
I see where you're going. Yeah.
it only stayed in the Ethiopian church, and it wasn't discovered by Westerners until 1700s. And I believe that some of the Dead Sea Scrolls appear to be from the Book of Enoch. So that goes back to at least the 1st century. So we've got these 200 angels, and they come down to Earth and they start having babies, and things turn nasty. So God decides to get rid of all the angels and lock them up underground. And then when the Nephilim have fought amongst each other until they're almost gone, he has a flood. But then the giants start appearing. And the giants in the Bible and throughout history are not nearly as tall as the Nephilim were supposed to be. So, but then you start seeing all these references to giants throughout just pretty much every region of the world. And it's pretty interesting. But if you look at this is kind of, the story of where these giant bloodlines would have come from. There's all sorts of cool conspiracy theories and stuff to go along with that. So does anybody else have anything else they want to talk about before I move on?
Well, you're talking about giants, and I think it's really interesting because in different shows we've discussed giants in different aspects of ancient history or whatever, and there is so much proof. I mean, actual physical bones of giants in different regions, even in the United States, that it's really cool that there's that physical tie-in with some of the books of the Bible. Yeah, in regards to giants. And then you've got that background where it goes on back to the Nephilim from there.
Yeah. Cool. And the theory being is that even though the Nephilim were wiped out, they had, I guess, humans inherited some of their DNA, and once in a while it pops back up, and you get giants. The giants, most people, the Nephilim were like 100 meters tall, apparently. But the giants throughout history average somewhere around 12 to 15. So they're not nearly that big. But, I mean, they do appear. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's also current stories of recent, the last few years, especially over in Afghanistan. You have the Kandahar giant. And up until the last couple of weeks, I've heard a couple of other stories from Afghanistan, different regions, that also had stories of our troops over there seeing and facing off with giants.
Yeah, and
it's in
several places recently have reported giant sightings. I believe someone in Indonesia, maybe, I want to say. I'm going to Google that.
Google is our friend.
Google is the best research assistant ever.
Right.
Sometimes they're not. Let's see. There was one spotted in Mexico, and that's the only recent one I've seen. But so apparently there was one spotted in Mexico not too long ago. Now I want to say I saw some video of one, maybe someplace in Indonesia, someplace. So there are still sightings to this day. Well, let me see what Ian says. Ian says, "Hello, all. Let's get into some gigantic Old Testament fallen sons of God." Absolutely, Ian. That's pretty much what we're going. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Actually, if you want to get deep into it, it's actually not the fallen sons of God. They've proved that wrong. The old, when they translated out of Hebrew into English, they did it completely wrong. And it actually translated into not the fallen ones, but there's a causation in the front of it. So it's supposed to mean those who fell in battle, that type of a situation. So it wasn't pointing out the fact that they were cast out of heaven. It was pointing out the fact that they were taken on and they fell in battle, that they took the giants out.
Well, it is
Yeah.
just it's pretty fascinating. And books of Enoch when you get through there, they talk about a solar calendar instead of a lunar calendar. And for those of you who don't know, everything in Hebrew is based on a lunar calendar instead of a solar calendar. Enoch supposedly lived 365 years, and he proposed a 365-day year. So, that number is closely associated with him. It's really fascinating. And I have a book I'm going to share with everybody. It's great. It's got all the books of Enoch and commentary. So let me see if I'm smart enough to share.
Ian's got a great point. The fact that it was translated into Greek first. So,
and as a lot of things are, you translate into Greek and then you translate it into English. And English, I'm sorry, is my native language, which I butcher constantly. But it steals so much from everybody else. The words don't mean what you think they mean when you get down to it sometimes. So,
especially from one translation to another, you can lose the original meaning very easily.
Yeah. So I do recommend reading this book. I'm only partway through it, in fact, but it is fascinating. So if you guys want to jump on the old Amazon and pick that up, it's not a bad book. But it's really interesting. And then you start getting into the conspiracy theories, which we'll probably cover a little bit. What if they're talking about aliens that came down? And so it's really fascinating subject to me. So
what I think is interesting is the fact that the Nephilim are actually so widespread through all these different cultural mythos, different legends and lore from across the world, kind of like the flood story kind of wraps itself around, as does the Nephilim. So there's something to the story that has to be true, or else this wouldn't fall in so worldwide. Like, so I have a little listing here that I did of some of the ones that I found. I didn't spend all the time just hunting because I'm sure there's probably hundreds. But the Norse has the same story with the frost giants. The Greek do with the Titans. The Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians all have the Anunnaki. Yeah, of course. The Celts, the Celts have the Fomorians. The American Paiute, of course, have the Sitaka, as in the Lovelock Cave type of ones. The Egyptians have
Where's Enzo? That's his girlfriend. She's going to be in that area.
The Aztecs had a set. The Mayans had a set of them. And one of our favorite ones, the Kentucky Cherokee.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely have that story too. So, and it goes on and on and on. We could list them all night, but nearly the exact same story of some kind of a sky being that cast down some of his, lackeys that were mating with the female ladies and having kids, and they were like, you can't do this anymore, and then all heck breaks loose. So same story all over the place.
Yeah, that's what I find fascinating. So many of these stories have, not only do they exist in the Christian Bible and the Hebrew Bible, and they also exist in virtually every culture on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they date back sometimes even farther, and sometimes not as far, but they always date back somewhere at least as far back as the stories that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
So
All of
oh,
them go back before, or all pre-flood.
Yeah.
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 So, and you get into this, there is the theory that they're not talking about ancient actual giants. I mean, probably bigger than what we're used to, but not, the 100-meter.
Right. Not the 35-story tall one.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
the 100.
Think what gravity would do to them.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. I don't think they'd be strong enough to hold themselves up.
So I'm
I was-
thinking, I wonder if they were more of still a spiritual being at that point. They could be that big. They could have that large mass and not
Well,
be
I
within
mean,
the constraints of.
mixed in with the extreme heights, that seems like they're just being very fanciful and trying to like just
And it
get their
could
point
be.
across.
Yeah.
There were actual like real sizes of giants placed within the Bible. So I grabbed a couple
That's
of
true.
them. So Goliath, everybody knows Goliath.
Goliath and his brother.
David and Goliath. They said that he was 6 cubits in a span. And a cubit is roughly 18 inches, and a span is roughly 9 inches. So if you add that up, he was around 9 foot 9 inches tall.
Yeah, so
So
not
So
not
not taller than the
unheard of.
cedars, like they were saying.
Yeah,
Right. Definitely
About
bigger
some of
than
them.
humans, but normal human size, but
Yeah.
not.
there are some people approaching that size today.
He was Hagrid, pretty much. He was Hagrid
Yeah.
sized.
Yeah,
The tallest one I found was Og, the king of Bashan, out of Deuteronomy.
Yep.
If you go and read through that, they don't talk about his actual size. They talk about the size of his bed,
yes,
as
that was
everyone
funny.
knows. Yeah, and his bed was 9 cubits in length and 4 cubits in width, so approximately 13.5 feet long and 6 foot wide. So they're guessing if he laid on that bed like an average person would lay on their bed, he would have been approximately 12 feet,
It's a
less
good,
or more.
Good guess, yeah, for sure.
So
So,
yeah, and a lot of the giants that we're talking around throughout the world are somewhere in the 10 to 15 foot range.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, they're big, but they're not unbelievably big. I saw a photo of a young woman in a grocery store the other day who was 9 foot tall. So I mean, they're out there.
Hmm.
People that tall are out there. They exist.
And some of the, again, back to the skeletons that have been found in the Americas, even some of them are 13, 14 feet. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you can
Is it
find
common? No. Did it occur? And is there evidence of that? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, what happens if you have a tribe of people, even one village full of people who range from 9 to 12 feet tall? You're going to have absolute mayhem. Everybody's going to be freaked out. They're ogres
Yeah.
or what have you. So there is definitely
You're
some
going to realize that you're not the biggest fish in
Yeah,
the sea.
there's definitely some substance someplace in these stories. And a lot of people think that not only are they talking about physical size, these people, creatures, whatever, are described as heroes,
Mhm.
heroes of old,
Yeah.
great ones of old. So, I mean, so some of them were good and some of them were bad, just like normal people.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's Ian says There is often a kernel of truth in biblical stories. For instance, the 10 plagues of Egypt were a result of a volcanic eruption in Greece. Wrath of God to some, science to modern eyes. Yeah, and there's something to that too.
And we also need to always consider the fact that even like nowadays, back in the day, I'm just using this as an example. Say a group of people see a UFO in the sky. They don't have the word UFO to describe what they saw. So they're going to describe it to the closest thing in their world that they identify with. And so, that gets passed down as that story. And then later on, maybe it's recognized as what we see would be a UFO now.
Yeah, you get chariots of fire because somebody got out of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This flaming ball landed and people got out of it. So it's a chariot of fire.
So, yeah, Ian said sky canoes. Exactly.
Yeah, why not?
They see it that way. And yeah. And it makes sense. It's to them that was their point of reference. So, yeah.
So
it's something that you just need to keep in mind when you look at the older stories, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think everybody agrees that there is a kernel of truth in all these stories. And sometimes it's not a kernel. Sometimes it's a boulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
I think one of the biggest things is the fact that even in biblical terms, when they kind of tried to explain what these giants or Nephilim looked like, they're explaining exactly all of these giants and like North American stuff looked like. 6 fingers, really long arms, double rows of teeth, heads too large for their bodies, things of that. That right there, you can't fake that.
Right.
Yeah, and there's images of Nephilim all over the place.
Yes.
Hold on. So this is what ChatGPT thought a Nephilim looked like. And then you get these Mesopotamian drawings. You see the human compared to the giants. It's, knee high. So like a child to an adult.
Yeah.
Could
We
you
also
imagine?
have to remember that people back then were much shorter than we are even now.
That's true. Yeah.
So if we had a 9-foot human and a 4-foot, which was probably average size for a person back then, so that's about right. Actually, we might be considered giants.
Well, that and the fact, if you think about it, like if you were say like 4-footish, and you're looking up at somebody that's 9.5, 10 feet, they are going to look ginormous, and you would probably have a tendency to be a little flowery with your words when you're explaining just how much taller they are than you, especially because you're probably scared or intimidated in some way. So you're going to be like
fishing,
yeah,
fish
was taller than the trees.
Yeah.
Look how much taller we are than the average. Even in the 1700s, the average person was not very tall. Everybody complains about, Napoleon was a short man. He had short man syndrome. Well, that's just going by his uniform, which is on display. He actually was of average height for the day. So he was 4 foot something or other. And that
you
was
see that in old homes around here, in the house that I used to live in, the staircase that went up into the attic bedrooms, it was, super, super tall, that the risers were way tall and way skinny. And you would crack your head immediately the second you went through that doorway. Even it was low for me, and I'm 5'2". So you could just imagine.
Yeah.
My son would, have a red knot in the middle of his forehead all the time.
He'd have a concussion.
Absolutely.
He would have a concussion. So and then this guy's holding a lion like a cat.
Rare.
And I'm going to tell you, I am not holding my cat like that, because I don't care how much smaller my cat is. I am going to be tore up.
Yep.
So that's also in that Mesopotamian region. And then there's I don't believe this is a real
No.
skeletons.
This one,
but
yeah, this one
this
is
is
not. I've seen this one before.
this
When
is
we
a
did
good
the
representation of what we're talking about. Giant skeletons.
Mm-hmm.
So, which they have found quite a few, I believe, in South America in the past.
Mhm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
which also
They found them all over.
Yeah, then they tend to mysteriously disappear.
Yes.
Now, the ones that are hoaxes, they come out and say, "Oh, this was a hoax. Let's show it to you and show you it's a hoax." But then there's the ones that just disappear. Oh, we don't know what you're talking about.
And I hate, we
Smithsonian.
beat this dead horse all the time, but the Smithsonian had a lot to do with some of the disappearances. They truly did.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
I truly believe that.
Yeah.
But that's
Mark,
telling.
you were
They'll
talking
come
about,
out. Go ahead.
You were talking about South America. I'm reminded of a story talking about, this is, I think, pre-flood maybe, but talking about men with red beards
Mm-hmm.
come to. I think we talked about it when we were talking about Atlantis several years ago. But men with red beards came on shore to teach, and
Right.
that story alone lines up with the story of the Watchers or the Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the forbidden knowledge and things like that, according to the Bible and according to the Book of Enoch. So I don't know, but that seems to be a common description, especially in older writings.
Well, and
they
that-
all have like red beards,
Yeah.
Things like that. So
Well,
And that's
starts bringing
interesting
us-
because the caves, where are those caves? We said it earlier. I can't remember. That have
The Lovelock Caves.
Yes, with the red-headed
Yeah.
giants that are found
Mhm.
there. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, and that starts bringing us back. We discussed when we were doing the Lost History episodes, which I think this might actually lead back into again. So a lot of these different civilizations have reported that they were taught how to build pyramids. They were taught how to do this. They were taught medicine by visitors from the sea, and
Mhm.
that they were tall, freakishly tall, sometimes referred to as giants, but they were tall. They all agree on that. And you get back to the Younger Dryas episode about 12 to 13,000 years ago, when there was a flood,
Mhm.
when the ice caps pardon me while I butcher the language again, inexplicably melted in a very short period of time and raised the sea level like 400 feet.
Mhm.
The coastlines we have today are because of that mass melting. So you get back to your antediluvian stories where there were giants walking the land are not so far-fetched. If you had a civilization that was tall, maybe not freakishly tall like we would consider, 9 feet or something, but to these 4-footers, 6, 7 foot tall is pretty big. So after the flood, which we know existed, these tall people started going around and trying to help people and trying to raise civilization again. That would have looked a lot like what we have going on in the Book of Enoch. In fact, the 200 angels that came down to get married and have children, one of them, Azazel, taught men how to forge metal and weapons of war and shields and helmets and armor. And another one taught women how the cutting of roots and basically plant husbandry and magic. So that kind of checks with the stories from all over the rest of the world.
I have something to share. I don't think I've
Okay.
told anybody this. Remember, man, it's been a couple years ago. We had, I think, Carrie Fields on,
Mm-hmm.
the lady from Australia that we interviewed.
Carrie Ann Fields. She is lovely.
And, she gave us that free class for astral travel.
Yes.
So I tried it. I did it a few times, and I was so unnerved. When I met this being, right? It was like a giant person, and it had like I don't know, it'd be like almost like a leather chest piece, something like that. Kind of crossing the chest and all that. And it said its name was Azazel. I was so unnerved because I knew I'd heard that word before.
Yep.
And it followed me into the astral. And it bothered me so much, I was like, no more. I'm not getting into this anymore.
Yeah. Azazel was the fallen one that taught mankind metallurgy, how to make swords and shields and breastplates, and women how to use makeup.
But I remember I looked it up, and I want to say Azazel was also the demon, the gatekeeper, or whatever, something like that. And it bothered me. I was like, nope, I'm done with this. I'm out. Not again.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that name is mentioned several times in Hebrew mythology. In fact, if you go through the Book of Enoch, it lists the 20 captains, quote unquote, of the fallen ones. And there are a lot of recognizable names in that list. So these are the devils, and then they also mention all the archangels in the same story. So maybe there's something to the names even. So maybe those are close to the real thing. I don't know. But we all know how history, when it's passed down orally, words can change. The stories can become distorted. But what amazes me is there's so many similarities from all these different stories all over the world. That's what really makes me sit up and take notice.
Yeah, in the Book of Enoch, it says Azazel is a leader of rebellious angels who taught forbidden knowledge to humans. Maybe it's a good thing you didn't go back, Phil.
Yeah. That was the second time. The third time he was there again, and I was like, nope.
Time to nope right on out of there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's wild.
So, yeah, I've got a list in here someplace about all the different.
I think Azazel was one of the principality angels. He's in like the third triad. All of the fallen angels from that were all from that third triad. The principalities, the archangels, and just the choir of angels.
Yep.
They're like the lowest in the. Yeah. And there's two above that, two more factions of angels.
The leaders of the different groups of the 200 are Samilzaz, Araklaba, Ramiel, Koklibel, Tamiel, that's a familiar one, Ramlel, Daniel, Ezekiel, Barakwajal. I'm sorry. Hassel.
You're making me feel good about my English now.
Armoros, Batterel, Ananel, Zachiel, Samsapil, Saturel. That sounds familiar. Turel, Jomjail, Seriel. I mean, there's a bunch of them. They name names. These guys are bad.
Ian said spoken like a native. I'm not sure native of where, but yeah.
And native of BFE, Kansas.
Yes, there you go.
For those of you who don't know where BFE is, by all means, look it up.
You'll see Mark's face right next to it.
Yeah. If you want a language butchered, even the English language, I'm your guy.
Same.
I can do it.
I own it.
We need to
I'm
make
really
that
bad at it.
ad.
I can read these words and I can sound them out in my head, and when they hit my mouth, they just come out as word salad. I mean, it's bad. I apologize to anyone I may have offended. Because I don't know. I may have summoned a demon. Hell, I don't know.
Oh no.
That's what happens the last time I read the ingredients on a something in the fridge there. Like, what? Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of famous giants out there that would supposedly be the descendants of these people.
Mm-hmm.
So
we talked about them a lot when we were doing the Kentucky Giants
right.
in the Ohio River Valley, and we were watching them like filter their way down into the lower Americas, and then that's when we started realizing that the same kind of things were popping up with like Quetzalcoatl and the dude that was running the Incas. They like the Indians, the Cherokee, ran them out of the Kentucky area and shoved them down in, and they traveled down, and then all of a sudden these nations that were not great at the time, the Mayans and the Incans and all of that, they were little piddly villagers that could barely grow their own crops, and then suddenly within decades they were these huge dynasties.
Yep.
And I thought it was really interesting when I found it, because I've never seen it talked about really a lot. But the skeletons of the giants that they were finding in the Ohio River Valley were almost always found with these gigantic feathered capes. They were wrapped up in them.
That. Yeah.
And I just thought it was super interesting that they were all found this way. And then when I started digging into like Quetzalcoatl and these great leaders of these big South American nations, if you go and you look at their statues that they're still prominently displayed, they all have the gigantic feathered cloaks.
Yep.
And the blonde hair and the blue eyes, or the red hair and the blue eyes. Yeah, and I think the Cherokee were absolutely correct. I think they ran them out, and I think they headed down south and they started over again down there. So
right. Well, I mean, we know that we don't know much of history. I think I didn't save it, but I read an article. There is a male figure called male chromosomal atom that every human being on the planet has as a common ancestor. And he lived well over 200,000 years ago. So humans have been around for quite a while. We've only really got, it's spotty, but it really only goes back about 8 to 10,000 years. And after you get past about 4,000 years, it gets really super sketchy. So what happened in all that time before the Great Flood? And supposedly these antediluvians lived 3, 4, 5, 900 years. So what kind of great things were they able to accomplish before that flood, when the coastlines were way far out into the Atlantic and the Pacific? there was an entire continent below Southeast Asia that disappeared under the water. Only the tops of the mountains show up above as islands. And we know this for a fact. We have the evidence. We know this for a fact. So what kind of great things? And yeah, maybe some of these people were tall by our standards, but they were also better educated. So they were great, not only in stature, they were great in intellect.
Look at some of the things that are left over. Look at like Angkor Wat. Look at, we've got the pyramids. We've got, even if you want to get into like Stonehenge and stuff. Actually, there's a article that I read just a couple of days ago about the altar stone at Stonehenge. They've now determined it came clear 500 miles away from Scotland, based on the chemical makeup of the stone itself. That's amazing. How did they get it here? There had to be a sophisticated form of some type of transport to get it to where it was put into place. Yeah, and Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, intensifies. Yeah.
Göbekli Tepe is a very interesting site.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually several sites attached to it that have not been and probably will never be excavated because they're basically one right on top of each other. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole big bit of history, and I really want to get into that later with the Graham Hancock books and whatnot. He has really done a deep dive into a lot of these things. Mm-hmm. And I know I can't do it justice, but I find it super fascinating that all these things click together. Your Nephilim, were they these great people who survived the flood, or were they the great people before the flood, and then the giants are their descendants?
Just the fact that there were giants afterwards, and they're not tied. They're not Noah's family. I mean, you've got evidence right there that there was at least some form of humans that did survive the flood. So maybe when they talk about the world, they meant their specific portion of the world is what was flooded, and that there were other lands where there were survivors. It very possible.
Most civilization is on the coastlines.
Mm-hmm.
The sea level comes up 400 feet in a matter of weeks. What happens to the civilization? The entire world, as everyone knew it, was swallowed.
Yeah.
Yes, there were some that survived. There were some that survived via boat. There were probably some of them out on the ocean when it flooded that survived and wondered, where's land? Where's land? We should have been there by now. So I find it interesting also that when you go through like in Enoch, all of these beings that supposedly married human women and created the giants, all of them were known to be teaching humans some aspect that we would consider normal today. Teaching metallurgy, teaching chemistry, teaching plant husbandry. Magic may have been math for all I know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
at one point it felt like magic for sure.
I've watched people solve equations, and it certainly seems
magic to me.
Math? Back devil.
Ian said the earliest stone circle in Britain is in northern Scotland. Every circle south of it was built later. Yeah, I know there was one on the Isle of Man. I don't know. Is there one north of that too? There probably is, and I just don't know it. But that's the only one I'm familiar with that is that far north. Because I know so much about the Isle of Man.
I can't even find what I did with my pen 5 minutes ago. So,
yeah.
So, do we want to talk about like the other? Go ahead, Phil.
I was going to say I find it strange. I'm sitting there looking up biblical figures in the lifespans up into the flood.
Mhm.
Most, Enoch was probably the shortest, had the shortest life. Adam, you were talking about Adam earlier. Um, According to the Bible, he lived to 930. Then Seth was 912. Enosh was 905. Canaan was 910. Mahalalel was 895. Jared 962. Enoch was 365. Methuselah, which was Enoch's son, and Noah's grandfather, he lived to 969. And then after the flood, according to the Bible, God flooded the earth because of sin, all this, and he shortened the lifespan of the humans to something like 120 years.
Mm-hmm.
I find it strange. I mean, what's to say their year wasn't different than ours? Like you were saying earlier, the Jewish year, was ran off of the moon cycles. But what's to say, the year isn't any different, or it wasn't different at the time, but still it amazes me the drastic change over the matter of that time, from Adam to Noah, and then it like falls off. And I've heard a lot of biblical scholars talk to it about that's when the firmament was broken, because during the flood, the water, the firmament was broken, the water fell from the heavens, and the water come up from the earth. Well, it's been proven that there's huge, reservoirs under the earth.
Yep.
But they say, the firmament held the water back because, according to the Bible, it has never rained up until Noah. So there's a lot going on. And like you're saying, there's so many different ways you could take this. But according to Enoch, according to the Bible, it was all caused by the Nephilim. The falling away, sharing the forbidden knowledge and all that was all caused by the Nephilim. And the barbaric treatment from the Nephilim to the humans, because they didn't do what they want. They started eating humans. Goes on, it's crazy. I mean, I'm not a huge biblical scholar. Right. Yeah. So it's, I don't know. It's pretty, if you think about it, it's pretty intense. And I would like to know, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm backtracking here. But when the firmament was broken, they're saying, a lot of the biblical scholars say that's when UV light started coming in, all this, from our atmosphere. And that's when the lifespan of the average person started falling away. I don't know. I'm just repeating what I've heard. I find it interesting, though.
I wonder too, they talk about the fact that things like viruses will affect our DNA and will change our DNA. So what if it was something, I'm not saying it was a virus, but something akin to that, where there's a massive shift in the area that they were living in that would have caused some sort of variation in the DNA from them that could have shortened lifespans too. Who knows?
But we know radiation affects your DNA.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, if it's solar radiation that's coming through now that the firmament is gone.
There you go.
What's to say that
That's
wouldn't affect it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm speculating here. I mean, that's what we do the best. So.
Right. Yeah. I don't know either, but it's fascinating to talk about and think about.
Yeah.
Well, I've got some more speculation for you when you brought up the firmament. So the firmament, the heavens, the younger Dryas, and the flooding from it was supposedly caused by something falling from the heavens. It's speculated that a meteoroid shower had large enough chunks that hit the ice cap multiple times, flash melting it and causing it to flood the earth. So wouldn't that be the firmaments breaking? Fire from the heavens hit the ice caps and melted all that water. And of course, a lot of it would have gone up into the air and fallen all over the world.
Yeah.
Because it was basically vaporized.
Right, and I'm curious to know. I don't know if you guys might know the figures or not, but when the ice caps melted, and when the ice caps melted, I don't know how long it took for the world to flood.
Weeks,
but I know biblically it says 40 days. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm assuming they measured days the same way we did. Ian actually asked a good question. Just kind of what we were talking about was how are they measuring years? I'm not about to do the math, but what if they considered a year, or what if they considered a year represented the quarterly equinoxes and solstices? That's possible.
So it would be
it's entirely.
It would be like the, looking at dog years as opposed to human years. A dog year. A dog is 7 years per one human year. So yeah, maybe.
All of human history was erased 13,000 years ago during this event. So it could very well have been an error in translation because we started measuring things different, or we didn't understand the verbal stories that were passed down. And so that's as close as they could get. And that's entirely possible.
Yep.
Human history was erased.
Yes, Ken, that's what I was saying about lives were longer before the flood. But Mark, to your point, something to think about, when Rome took over Israel and the entire part of Europe and North Africa, they changed everybody to their calendar, the Roman calendar.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there again, how many times did they switch counting
the calendars? Yeah.
And we've seen in history where the authorities that be have adjusted the calendar to make it look like they've been in charge for longer.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple examples of that. So do we really know? No. Are we ever going to know?
No.
Unlikely.
Highly unlikely, yeah.
So, but we do know that 13,000 years ago, during this Younger Dryas, something fell from the sky and the sea level rose about 400 feet in just a few weeks. 40 days and 40 nights is a few weeks.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So this was a catastrophe. It did not flood the whole world, but it definitely flooded where all the civilizations would have been, which were the coastline.
It flooded their whole world.
You got a meteor that hit, your fire from the sky.
Look at the maps, or better yet, look at the pictures of the Earth at night where all the lights are. Where are all the lights? They're along the coasts of every continent. What happens if, once again, the water level come up 400 feet? New York would be gone. All the cities on the East Coast would be gone. California itself would be underwater. Most of Alaska would be underwater. Japan would cease to exist. All the islands in Indonesia and all of that it'd be underwater. And you only have a few weeks to evacuate. You're not going to get everyone. And
look where we are now, in Kansas and in the middle region of the United States, we used to be a shallow sea. I mean, there's ample fossil evidence of that.
So Missouri is only 300 foot above sea level.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're only 800 feet right here.
Yeah.
Currently. 820. Don't ask me how I know that, but it's 820 in Independence, Kansas.
I know how you know that.
Right? Yeah, I know that. So the water comes up 400 feet. It's going to be, pardon my French, a cluster. I just edited myself. That was great, right?
Do it this way.
I'm learning. So
Yeah, I mean,
really, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I think a lot of it is just people don't know. I mean, there's no way to know the whole story. We're basing off of ancient writings. I believe
Yeah.
the Bible. That's me, you know. But other writings, you know, the Book of Enoch, that's debatable whether it's non-canonical, whatever. That's not this show. But then you have the Sumerian writings. You have all the writings from, you know, I think you were talking about it earlier, Jess. All those different writings, all the different stories, a story from around the world.
Yeah, you've got Pliny the Elder that adds in, stories that
Right.
don't match specifically with the Bible, but there's a lot of stuff
They're
that,
close.
yeah, there's some of
Right.
the stories that are similar.
Right. And it's all about the same time.
Mhm.
And it goes back to the antediluvian period.
So,
You know,
like I said, the world did get destroyed by flood. The civilized world did get destroyed by flood. We don't know how advanced those people were. I would imagine at least late Bronze Age,
Yep.
from the stories that I've read. So you have a seafaring late Bronze Age civilization that spans the entire world because the oceans were much smaller and easier to traverse. And then all of a sudden, the sea level rises 400 feet, and all those cities just disappear. And underwater archaeology has found the remnants of cities off the coast.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Yes.
Alexandria, they're pretty sure that, like Cleopatra, where she lived and where some of her things were, they can see it underwater. It's
Yeah.
not that far out.
Yeah, and that's fairly recent
Mhm.
in the geologic timescale. But there's been reports of during a tsunami type wave that happened in the Atlantic, they could see the remains of a city out on the mud flats several miles away from the current coastline when the water moved out before the wave came in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this was off the coast, I believe Spain, maybe it was Portugal.
I think it was Portugal. I think you're right.
Yeah.
So we know they're out there.
Yeah. I mean, even like the Bimini Road, like Graham
Yes.
Hancock is a
Yeah.
big proponent to that. He claims he can see where it was supposed to go to. There was another landmass there that's now underwater that, all of that ran along. And that Bimini is absolutely man-made.
Well, and
which I think
there's roads and cities underneath the water in Europe. I forget what sea it is up there. I don't think it's the Black Sea.
Or the North Sea. Maybe.
But I want to say it might be, it's in between Europe and Asia, I think. Anyway,
Hmm.
you can get down there. You can find the roads. You can find pottery on the side of the roads. You can find the foundations of buildings, all of it under the water that used to be above water. So that was an entire civilization that was swallowed by the sea.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all over the
I wanna
world. The
share
evidence
this
is out
real
there.
quick.
I believe I saw that
I
on
just
Searching
looked.
for Atlantis. It was a series on History Channel, maybe?
Probably.
This
Yeah.
this is from, I want to say 1635. Is that what it said?
Mm-hmm.
But this is apparently what the map representation before the flood. I mean, there was land all the way out here. They think this is Atlantis over here.
Ooh, I wonder if the Hesperides are there.
Right?
They might. I don't know. Well, I mean, I've got this book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. We're going to have to get out and do a show on that one of these days.
That'd be
Because
Yeah.
it's got maps of things they should not have been able to draw.
Yeah, but I mean, with this, you can see Antarctica right next to South America. Australia, over here, but it was all landlocked. If you can see,
Right? Can you see the
So who knows?
Indonesia
I mean-
area? We talked about that not too long ago. Yeah, see
Yeah, I mean it's close. Coming off
that
Antarctica and
area
all that.
up there. You know, we know that that was all above. That was all above water.
Interesting.
And there was a civilization there. We know that it existed.
Ken said he just read that the Black Sea Basin structure, if you emptied the sea, might have been a civilization. It's kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. This just opens up so much stuff to look at and to consider of
And
how
even
much we really don't know about human history.
Jess and I were just talking last night, you know, one of the, and you'll have to remind me which one it is, one of the Great Lakes, there's a Stonehenge basically at the bottom of it that they have found. They just don't know who put it there or why it was there or when, because it's way under the water.
Yeah.
So
It has
at some
carvings.
point that was above.
It has carvings of elephants on it too.
Yeah.
And there were elephants in America.
Yeah.
There was an American elephant, and you know we had mastodons and such here until
And
they
there
were hunted.
there were African elephants too that were being brought over
By
on
ships, yes.
ships.
Yep.
They didn't make it very long because they're not suited.
They were in like
for-
New Mexico or somewhere, weren't they?
Well, some of them died going up the Ohio River Valley. They didn't make it for very long
That's
that
right.
way.
That's what it
And
was.
then a lot of them died, yeah, in the lower, like New Mexico region and stuff like that. They came up that far, and of course there wasn't enough food for
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
elephants. So
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause they
These
eat
are
it.
chicken hinges in Lake Michigan. Yes. Thank you.
But you get to looking at some of these ancient sites, these mounds and stuff that were oriented to the solstices and stuff, and they think some of these are from the time right around that Younger Dryas event. So, like I said, we know there were people before that, and that there were people after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really truly believe a lot of these stories still go back to that ancient flood. I think everything leads back to that ancient flood.
Well, like Jess was pointing out, too many civilizations have similar stories, and a lot of them do include the story of the flood, a great flood.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and then you get the similar languages, you know, from Asia to Europe that nobody can account for.
Yeah.
So, how did that happen? Well, I mean, if there was sea travel all around the world, that's how it's accounted for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I believe there was a study going on. Oh, this has been 20 years ago or more. They were compiling a list of words that anybody on the planet should be able to recognize because the root word was in every single language. I don't know whatever became of that, but supposedly you could go on YouTube and listen to a story told in the words that they knew, and everybody should be able to get the gist of it. I'll have to look that up. It's been 20 plus years since I read that. I don't know.
Kind of like the Rosetta Stone, but
Yeah.
just with specific words brought all together.
With root words that everybody has in common.
Interesting.
Be like us, listen to somebody speak Old English. We can
Yeah.
understand about
Yeah.
a third of it, but
Yeah, if that. It's a lot different. Our English has really evolved.
well, it hasn't evolved. We've stolen everything we wanted.
There you go.
Well, I think
Kind of
it's,
like the
you know,
museums.
all the immigrants and stuff come in and all of those different languages kind of coalesce. I think the English language has probably almost completely changed since that Old English time because specifically the European nations and the Americas have accepted all of these people from other places, and all of that local colloquialisms and things like that all get blended in, and different words for different things. And I think that's, like our English language has, like 5 words that sound exactly the same but all mean different things.
Yes.
Right.
Comes
Yeah.
from that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think there's Ian, correct me if I'm wrong. There is a town in Great Britain someplace that's name literally started out as the Hill, and every group that moved into called it the Hill, and it's like the name broken down means hill, 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 hill.
I can't remember what the name is, but
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. I've seen that.
So then you've got the Ainu language in Japan is very, very similar to the native language of the Basque region of Europe. It's just, I don't know how anybody could think that everything wasn't connected much closer than we think at some point in time.
Torpenhow in Cumbria, England. The name is made up of Tor, which is hill in Old English, Pin, which is hill in Welsh, and How is hill in Old Norse. While often referred to as Torpenhow Hill, there's no official map listing a hill with that name. So it refers to a village in the area, but it basically means hill, 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 hill.
Yep. So, I mean,
It's funny.
Language is funny. It is funny. I wish I could speak at least one of them.
I'm barely fluent in English.
Well, I also speak sarcasm quite well, though.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
There we go.
I'm very fluent in sarcasm.
I know a little Dutch. I kind of lost it, though, when I knew. I don't know much anymore.
So, anyway, it's a fascinating subject. I think I want to encourage everybody on here, once again, to start doing their own research and dig into this. We have really barely scratched the surface, and it is connected to so many things. So many things. And like I said, I really want to go back into the forgotten history thing. Hopefully this year, I really want to get back into that and get to going on some of these subjects, because it's just so much information has been lost. Even in historical times, we lost so much from the Library of Alexandria. How much more did we lose when the sea level came up 400 feet in just a few weeks?
Right.
I know those people had libraries. They had a written language. I know they did.
There was just recently a library that was discovered, too, and it was found behind a wall. Was it in a monastery? Oh my gosh, where was it? But it's got thousands and thousands of scrolls in it
That nobody even knew existed.
They didn't even know existed, and now they're finding them, and they've got interpreters coming in to translate them. What is the name of that? If anybody knows what I'm talking about, throw it in chat, please. I'm Googling to see if I can find it real quick.
Again, the best research
than
ever.
There's something to be said for that. I'm just a little off topic, but Pam's like, oh, wait a minute. They just found this hidden room that's got thousands of scrolls in it from God knows how long ago. And it kind of makes me sad nowadays, because if that were to happen to us now, if we had this sudden cataclysm and we were wiped out, the majority of our stuff is going to be gone because it's no longer digital. It's digital. It's going to be gone because we're no longer, truly keeping things in some kind of a, keep it in your hand type of format.
Right.
And it's going to be gone.
Well, and think if that ancient civilization that we believe existed was already putting things on paper and vellum and whatnot, all of that would have been gone. Water does bad things to paper.
Yeah.
That would have all been gone.
We'd
If
even
they were
talked,
that advanced, I
Mark,
doubt they would have been using stone or clay.
Yeah.
yeah, we'd even talked, advanced civilizations, past the cataclysmic event, that Graham Hancock talks about. We've even talked about that years ago, to where even if they were keeping things digitally,
It would be sand. by now.
flash drives or whatever, just something we could. I mean, they'd be gone, because they were under, glaciers and all of that.
Yeah, our technology
So-
today, there wouldn't be anything left of our civilization after an event like that.
Nope.
Not if we were located mostly on the coast. And even, large parts of North America, Europe, Asia, they flooded as well. They just didn't stay flooded. So
Mm-hmm.
all that would just disappear overnight. So I really, as a Christian, I believe that what the Bible teaches us is correct. But I wouldn't call myself a man of science. As a reasoning individual, I also recognize the fact that a lot of these stories started out as being an oral tradition that was passed down, and I have played the whisper game and know what I know what happens. I know what happens when I tell a story. I get a little excited.
Telephone game. Yeah.
My numbers might change. I might flop things out of order because I just can't get it all out. So I can see where the same story could end up being 100 different stories all around the planet. I can definitely see that. So it lends credibility to the story itself, even if the names have been changed because they couldn't pronounce Irma Scuffles or whatever. Because I can't say anything right. If I were to tell these stories, which I did on here, I would butcher everything, and it's bad. It's really bad. I'm not the only one.
Something else.
Okay.
Something
Sorry,
else
go
to,
ahead.
oh, you're okay. To think about is the Bible, for instance. The first 5 books were written by Moses. So how much of that was passed down orally?
Mhm.
All of it.
I mean, aside from, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, I mean, obviously Genesis was orally passed down. Exodus is a story of Moses and the escape from Egypt, and Leviticus and Numbers and all that's all moving to the Promised Land. That's all law. I mean, Genesis. That all has to be orally passed down.
Yeah,
Their
and they
traditions,
lost
talks
all
about
that
Adam
when
and
they
Eve.
went into captivity. So they had
Right.
to just remember it and write it down again.
Just remember that history is always spoken through the victor. The ones that are
Yeah.
defeated are the ones that lose their history too. And that's
true.
ours. Okay, so I found that monastery. It's called the Sakya, Sakya Monastery Library, and it's located in Tibet. It was discovered within the monastery walls in 2003, and it contains approximately 84,000 manuscripts, including Buddhist scriptures, literature, history, philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, agriculture, and art.
Wow.
The library is about 60 meters long and 10 meters high, and it
Wow.
houses invaluable insights into the early development of the Tibetan Buddhist thought and practice. So what they're doing right now is they have digitization efforts going on. And they started this project in 2011 so they can make the collection accessible to international scholars, which is amazing. So I thought that was really
Wow.
cool.
That's cool.
That is cool.
And there's a library too, it says, at St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt. That's also known for its extensive collection of ancient manuscripts. That's cool. I didn't know about that one.
Right?
But this one is amazing. This is probably as close to the lost library that we're going to get. Hopefully there's some things in there that will help fill in some details, because that's 84,000 scrolls. Can you imagine how long that's going to take? But what kind of information is in them?
Right.
I'm a librarian. I'm over here like, yes.
Here's a hint.
So
There's going to
exciting.
be a large bunch of that is probably going to be either tax records or
Very possible.
genealogy.
I think it was walled up. Ann asked, how the devil do you lose a library that big? I think it was
They walled it up, and it was probably to secure it, to make
was
sure that
probably
it wasn't
intentional.
destroyed.
To keep it from falling into the wrong hands.
Hmm.
Then they forgot about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It only takes a generation or two if people are keeping something very secret. If only one or two people know and they're wiped out, then nobody knows anymore, where it actually ended up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, I mean, think about this. Our grandparents and great grandparents. We've talked about this a ton on What If Tomorrow. They had knowledge that we have no clue about right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, canning and food preservation and
Mhm.
farming and all that. People are finally now trying to rediscover that, but
We almost
it's
lost
not
it
so
all.
far away. Yeah, we're not so far away from that knowledge being totally gone.
Yeah, that's just a couple of generations ago when it was,
Right.
it was embedded in, it was life. It was daily life.
And that's without having a
Right.
great catastrophe. That's just people.
Mhm.
What happens when you have that
Yep.
catastrophe? How much do you lose? You lose everything,
Mhm.
except apparently for a few people who survived and went around and tried to teach people how to build and math and whatnot. And there's records of this in Egypt. There's records of this in South America. There's records of this in Asia.
Mhm.
And I want to say the Polynesian area. So there's something to this, and I really think the Book of Enoch. Once you read between the lines, there is a lot of verifiable information there. If you choose to look at it that way, read between the lines, and the facts as they're presented in there are facts, but they were passed down orally, and when they were written down, because they date from about the same time, they date before Moses, so they would have had to have been written down from memory after the cataclysm, and we all know how humans are.
Mhm.
Our memories aren't perfect, and to make a story make sense, we will fill it in. Is how we are. Is what we do.
I wish I had the ability of the storytellers back when it was all oral tradition, because, the majority of the time they had oral historians. So it was passed down in songs and prose and ways to make it easy to remember. But, the original meaning, can it be lost? Absolutely. And it probably was in a lot of cases. But just look at all the information in regards to being close to the earth and things like that, like the Celtic Druids had. They were wiped out. All that information was lost.
Yep.
What did we lose there in regards to spirituality and the workings of
Herbalism.
yes, yeah, all of that. It was wiped out in just like a generation.
So,
And it sucks because that can be lost so
Well,
quickly.
I mean, are we so far removed? I guess. I mean, you're talking about the Celts and all that.
Hmm.
They were all warfaring tribes.
Hmm.
And obviously, like the old saying goes, knowledge is power. If you take away the knowledge, you have control. Are we so far removed to modern times
Absolutely
how much
not.
are
Look
we as
what's going on
people
with the
kept
media
in the dark? Right.
on
Yes.
purpose.
About what's really
Look at
going
the
on.
current media.
Mhm.
They, I mean, yeah, it happens, and a lot of times it happens intentionally. We see it
Absolutely.
happening today. You have to really dig sometimes to find out what's really happening, because the talking heads are going to tell you what they want you to think.
Mhm.
Yep. I don't think it was
And
any different.
I don't think it's any
1,000 years
different
ago.
now than it was 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. It may be slightly better, because at this point, most people on the planet can read or write to some degree. We're able to
Right.
transmit knowledge through the written word. Um, so that makes it harder for the powers to be to mislead the people. But back when nobody could read or write, you had to listen to what your betters told you, and that was the facts, whether they were true or not.
Right. And if you
Because you're
look
right.
at during the medieval time, 11, 12, 13, 1400, most people weren't allowed to be able or allowed to learn to read.
Mhm.
You weren't allowed to keep a
Whereas,
Bible.
the nobility, right, the nobility, the priests, and all that were the only ones that were able to learn or allowed to learn to read, so they could spread the knowledge that what they want to spread. And again, it's really no different today, other than the fact, like your example, Mark. I mean, there's such a medium now. If people really want the information, they can dig and they can compare notes and come up to their own conclusions. And I think that's, I mean, just a modern day example. Look at communist China on how locked down their internet is compared to here. Even though I know they're trying to lock down certain spots and areas and whatever the internet, but we have more freedom of information over here compared to what's in China in modern day right now.
And that's true. When you control the information, you control the people. It is mental slavery instead of physical.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So now that I've got on my tiny political soapbox,
Well,
it's not a
we've
very
been going
big
down
one
this rabbit hole for a while.
for a while. So anyhow, I don't really have a whole lot more on the Nephilim per se, but I think reason I picked this one is because I wanted to lead it back into the forgotten history thing, and I would like to get back into that in the next few months. So I'm going to start coming up with a plan for that, and I'm going to get it to all of you so that we can start looking into that, because looking back, those were some of our most popular shows. They were some of our most fun shows, and they were definitely some of the most intellectually stimulating shows that we have had. And I want to get back into it because I love it. I love history. And I want to get back into it. So,
Yep.
all right. Anybody else got anything else to add?
No.
Not to the show, but keep an eye out next week. Mark and I are going to be talking on What If Tomorrow about AI becoming the ultimate threat.
Yes.
Word.
Yes.
Some scary
Yeah.
stuff.
There might be some fun stuff to go
Yep.
along with that too. So,
Yep.
All right. And what's going to go on next week on Border Town Strange?
We are going to be doing a deep dive on the phone app Randonautica.
Mhm.
And for those
Cool.
of you who don't know what that is, it's an app that came out, it's been pre-COVID. It got really big during COVID, actually, because it was kind of get your feet on the ground and go out for a walk type of situation. But it's a kind of a brainchild of this group of people who wanted to see how like the hive mind and how like the singular mind with intention could affect the outside world. You know, if you put thought into it, will it come into being type of a situation. And what it is you plug an intention into the app. You can pick anything. You can pick like I want to see a color, or I want something peaceful, or something with love, or even, you know, you can go the hairy side, you know, something crazy or death or something. And you put your intentions into it, and it pulls a map up, and it's supposed to lead you to whatever that is within a particular area. And oddly enough, so far,
Yeah.
I've been testing it. It's worked about 85% of the time.
It's pretty wild.
It worked at least 75% of the time the other day when we all tried it together.
It did, yeah.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
was interesting. Yes.
It actually got very famous back in, I think it was 2018. A group of kids in California decided to take a little randonautica trip. And I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe their intentions that day that they put in were something crazy, I think was theirs. And it took them on a trip all over their city, and they ended up at a dock on the ocean. And underneath the dock was a suitcase, and in that suitcase was a lady's body who had been missing for weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
So,
Oh, but that smelled good. Ugh.
yeah.
I need to do
So,
it.
yeah.
You need to try it, Phil,
Put a
and when you
suitcase
do,
on
make
me or
sure
something.
you. Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it? If you do happen to do it, make sure that you document it so you can let us know how it went, because we want to get as many stories of our area as we can get.
Yeah.
Now
So for all of
I
you
know I
that are
tried it in the
list-
past.
Yeah.
I think Jess, you introduced it to me, like right after we first met on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I downloaded it, messed with it, and I didn't actually go to the points it showed. You know, not that it really counts for anything, but I did mess with it, and it showed like points a couple miles down the road and out in the middle of a field. And I was like, man, that's somebody else's property. I don't want to go out there, you know.
Yeah. It's almost better to do it in a in-town setting because it's not discerning, you know, on like if it's not on the road, it's not going to be like, oh, well, I'll give you a different point. So there has been occasions where, you know, like it was in the middle of somebody's backyard, and you're certainly not going to walk in on someone's backyard. But it's good to do it in an in-town setting because things are a little bit more accessible. Property lines aren't quite so grand, especially as they are out in your way, out in the rural areas.
Yeah.
You hate to walk in on somebody's pasture. But yeah, for all of these that are listening and watching, if you want to join us next Wednesday night at 7 p.m. on Bordertown Strange, download the app. It's free. And run some randonauticas and take pictures of what you find if you find anything fantastic, and then let us know about it.
Send it to bordertownstrange@gmail.com, and we'll make sure we get it in the show. So we're talking to you, Ian, Enzo, Ken.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else tonight. With that being said, I wish everybody a good night. I hope you enjoyed the show. Those of you who are listening to us on a podcast provider, you can visit us on YouTube. You can check us out on Facebook, and you can watch the show all over. You can watch it like everybody else did and see the comments and stuff. I encourage everybody to do that. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm pretty funny looking, so you might even just get a kick. Oh, look, that guy's uglier than me.
No.
It's not a high bar for me.
So,
Yeah. So anyway, I hope you all have a good week, and I will see those of you who watch What If Tomorrow on Monday. And 2 weeks from tonight, we will be talking about Japan's suicide forest. That should be, well, it should be interesting.
well,
All right, guys.
Sure.
Everybody have a good night.
good night, everybody.
Good night.